Amazing transformation. Kind man saves dying kitten from ice. Discover the incredible journey. T. In the heart of a small Midwestern town, Tom Peterson, a kind-hearted teacher, faced the chilling winds of winter alone. Despite his unwavering devotion to his students, the weight of his personal struggles gnawed at him unrelentingly. Just 34 and already carrying the burden of a shattered past, Tom had lost the family home that had once been a wellspring of joyful memories. With every day that passed, he found himself sacrificing meals to ensure his students had the supplies they needed to succeed. His spirit remained unyielding in the face of adversity, yet the gnawing loneliness began to seep into the corners of his mind. Tom's usual solace came from his routine. He found comfort in the classroom, surrounded by eager faces. But as winter tightened its grip, a bone-chilling emptiness persisted. It struck him one fateful afternoon as he strolled through the local park, ice and snow crunching beneath his boots. The world around him appeared stark and cold, mirroring the turmoil within. Then he heard it, a faint, desperate mewl. His heart plummeted as he spotted a tiny, shivering kitten trapped beneath a thick layer of ice. Instinct kicked in. This little creature, small and vulnerable, called to him in a way that mirrored the struggles surrounding him. Tom knelt and began to chip away at the ice, his fingers growing numb within moments. Doubt crept in. Was this foolish? Was it a waste of time? The townsfolk surrounding the park cast their disparaging glances, whispering words like fool and waste. Their judgment scratched at his resolve, each gaze like a dagger aimed at his compassion. The pressure mounted, squeezing his insides. What if he failed? What if his efforts amounted to nothing? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Tom's determination clashed violently with the cacophony of doubt echoing in his head. The cold air made it hard to breathe as he thought of the lives he tried to uplift. Yet here he was, struggling to save this tiny soul who depended on him completely. The frustration turned into anguish, each strike against the ice feeling futile. The kitten was distressed, and in Tom's mind, that trembling form bore the weight of his failures as a teacher, a provider, a man. His thoughts raced uncontrollably. He felt the tension crackling in the icy air. It felt as if the very earth would split beneath his turmoil. In that moment of madness, a glimmer of light shone through when a wealthy benefactor watched, intrigued by Tom's relentless pursuit. But this newfound attention, this urge for validation, stirred a mix of fear and obligation within him. He could almost hear Mr. Jenkins, his once mentor, intoning about potential and privilege. The stakes were rising. Would embracing this interest mean abandoning the very values that defined him? Tom faced this new tension alone while drawing dozens of emotions into a vivid storm within his heart. And as he finally broke through the ice and lifted that trembling kitten into his arms, the world around him blurred. The scorn from the townsfolk, the expectations weighing heavy on his shoulders, they all faded momentarily. But uncertainty pressed in heavily, waiting to unveil what new revelations this moment would bring. In that precious life held close to his chest, could he find himself, or would he lose everything he believed in? The conflict, thick as the winter air, loomed larger than ever. The warmth radiating from the small, shivering body nestled against his chest was a stark contrast to the biting cold that encased him. As Tom cradled the rescued kitten, a surge of hope surged through his veins, awakening something deep within him. He realized that in saving this fragile life he had ignited a flicker of purpose that had long been dormant. But even amid the warmth of this revelation, a new layer of conflict unfurled. Tom felt the gaze of the townsfolk, those who had mocked him moments ago now transformed into an audience capturing his every move. Their whispers had shifted from derision to curiosity. What would they think when they saw him nurture this vulnerable creature? Their approval was not something he had sought, yet it loomed over him, demanding acknowledgement. As he moved from the park to his small, sparsely furnished apartment, his mind churned with reflections of his choices. The kitten mewed softly, nudging at his chin, and in that instant, the creature became more than a mere testament to his kindness. It embodied his fragmented aspirations, his unfulfilled dreams, and his unyielding resolve to forge a future not dictated by past failure. Yet the very idea of pursuing those aspirations brought forth a torrent of fear. What if he stumbled again? What if his efforts to nurture this life mirrored his attempts to rebuild his own? Tom placed the kitten gently in a makeshift bed he fashioned from an old flannel shirt, watching with never-ending fascination as the small creature settled into its new sanctuary. Yet the threads of worry tugged persistently at his heart. Could this act of compassion become a catalyst for broader change in his life? Would he have the courage to face the shadows of his perceived inadequacies? The next day, as Tom entered the classroom, the presence of his usual students felt different. Perhaps it was the solitude he had endured, or the emotional weight from that quiet night. Today, he searched for connection amid the hushed excitement that followed his absence. The kitten now shared a corner of his home, somehow infusing his days with unaccustomed joy. Yet it also demanded careful nurturing of his spirit. His heart raced as he caught glimmers of admiration in his pupils' eager eyes. They craved his touch, his guidance, just as he craved theirs. But the specter of his recent choices visited him as well. The weight of the benefactor's observation, their interest in his choice to save the kitten, loomed large. Tom grappled with inner turmoil. Did that potential endorsement he sensed represent the validation he yearned for? Would he sacrifice the integrity of his teaching for acceptance? With each passing lesson, he struggled and failed to quell the rising tide of fear. Was he merely trying to win the approval of those around him? He attempted to redirect his focus onto each student, pouring effort into their development while managing the complex emotions swelling within him. He initiated projects centered on resilience and vulnerability, feeling each description resonate with his own journey. As the days unfolded, the bond with the kitten deepened exponentially. In the solitude of his home, they became partners in recovery from their respective predicaments. Each time the kitten reached for him, he felt renewed, but doubt shadowed even their joyful moments. Could he take the next step, using this experience not just as a momentary connection, but as a launching pad into a new phase of his life? Then, one fateful evening, Tom received an unexpected call. The benefactor wanted to meet, an invitation saturated with potential yet laced with anxiety. Did he dare step into a world that could offer him more, while risking the authenticity he had fought so hard to maintain? Tom's heart raced as the reality of the moment dawned upon him. Tomorrow would bring a reckoning. He would finally have to decide if he would embrace the opportunity or retreat back into the shadows, fearing the unknown. Would this pivotal moment define his path, or would it merely be another choice he regretted? In the silence vibrating around him, the answer had yet to unfurl. Tom's dreams tangled with reality as he sat in the dim light of his apartment, heart pounding with anticipation and trepidation. The call from the benefactor echoed in his mind, each ring a reminder of the fragile line he now walked between ambition and authenticity. Bound by the hope he had stirred within himself, he grappled with what awaited him the following day. To walk into that meeting would mean risking everything he had fought to reclaim, everything he thought he understood about himself and his worth. The night hung heavy around him while the kitten, blissfully unaware of its owner's turmoil, curled up in his lap. Its steady purring became a reminder of life's simple comforts, yet it also served as a mirror reflecting Tom's inner conflict. He realized how much he needed this moment of tenderness, this reassurance of connection. But that didn't quell the doubts dancing in his mind like shadows on the walls. Could kindness truly pave the way for something more significant in his life? Or was he simply standing at the edge of another failure? With tossing thoughts refusing to grant him rest, he pushed himself off the couch and wandered to the kitchen. The flicker from the overhead light illuminated a calendar plastered with deadlines and obligations, reminders of his responsibilities as a teacher. Each pending date felt like a noose tightening around his commitment to remain true to himself. In his reverie, the idea struck. What if this meeting could redefine not only his career, but also the way he perceived his role in his students' lives. In the light of this realization, he began to jot down ideas. His fingers danced across the pages, drawing lines between his aspirations and potential paths forward. What if he initiated a program aimed at fostering resilience among the youth? He envisioned sessions filled with honest discussions, revealing the vulnerabilities that bound them all in shared experiences. As he wrote, he noticed how quickly the words flourished on the page, breathing life into his long-buried dreams. But each pulse of inspiration was met with an equal thrust of self-doubt. What made him think he was worthy of being a role model, let alone spearheading such undertakings? The echoes of the townsfolk's derision still teased him from the sidelines of his mind. Had their curiosity shifted to approval, or did it merely mask their mockery? Could he genuinely turn the tide of public perception, or would he find himself drowning in the same ridicule he had encountered before? After hours of scribbling and erasing, Tom began to feel a flicker of determination chasing away the shadows of uncertainty. For the first time, he dared to recognize that the meeting with the benefactor could become a juncture, a moment where he could transform his life's narrative into one of courageous ambition, rather than fear-driven responses. The realization pulled at him, urging him to seize the opportunity instead of allowing it to slip through his fingers. Tom lay in bed, still haunted by the subscription of guilt, yet nestled alongside it was a budding bravery urging him to step forward. As sleep began to cloak him, he realized that the time had come to face not only the benefactor, but the darker corners of his insecurities. He could no longer retreat. It was time to confront the very essence of who he aspired to be. With each tick of the clock, dawn approached, and he knew that the hour of reckoning had arrived. The decision ahead loomed larger than any in his past. His heartbeat echoed that truth. What awaited him at that meeting could either shatter his self-perception or help construct a new foundation for his future. He awoke with an unyielding question pressing against the walls of his mind. Would he emerge from this confrontation with newfound strength, or would he find himself retreating once more into the shadows of doubt? Determined to uncover the answer, Tom steeled himself for whatever lay ahead. Tom stood before the bathroom mirror, bracing himself as the first rays of sunlight filtered through the window. His reflection betrayed a man caught in the throes of internal conflict. The unshaven stubble and bags under his eyes bore witness to the turbulent night that had just passed. He knew the meeting was not just a mundane professional engagement. It represented the crucible in which his long-suppressed potential would either be realized or extinguished. He took a moment to breathe deeply, trying to gather his thoughts. He imagined the benefactor's well-tailored suit, the confident posture, and the forceful handshake that awaited him. What if this benefactor saw right through the fabricated layers of confidence he had managed to drape over himself? What if instead of recognition, he encountered ridicule? But even as these doubts swirled in his mind, glimmers of hope emerged. Wouldn't it be just like him to turn those fears into motivation? To transform the narrative of his life into one of triumph over adversity? Tom gathered himself and decided to channel his anxiety into preparation. He crafted an outline of his vision for the youth program, ensuring each point articulated not only what he intended to offer, but how it would stem from his experiences. Aware of the wisdom and vulnerability, he sought to ground his proposal in authenticity, hoping to draw from both triumphs and failures. It was a delicate dance, to reveal his flaws without letting them define him, to confront his fears while guiding others through theirs. As he finished his notes, his phone buzzed. The screen lit up with a message from an old colleague, encouraging him and reminding him how far he had come since those earlier days of uncertainty. He felt a flicker of gratitude, noticing how crucial those reminders were, acknowledging allies on his journey. But just as swiftly, he felt the familiar pang of insecurity. Would his colleagues understand the sea of change he was trying to navigate? Did they truly respect him, or were they merely supporting the facade he had crafted? These questions twisted in his stomach as he prepared to step out into the day, feeling more like an imposter than a leader. He left his apartment and made his way to the cafe where the meeting would unfold. The walk was punctuated by moments of self-reflection. Could a gathering over coffee and conversation really be the turning point in his life? He wanted to believe it was possible, yet self-preservation nudged him toward caution. What if this benefactor was not simply an opportunity, but a test of his resolve? As he parked his emotions away for the time being, Tom reached the cafe. He forced himself to step through the threshold, his heart racing with every footfall that brought him closer to the table where the benefactor awaited. His mind was a cacophony of thoughts and fears, each vying for his attention. In the cafe's warmth, he spotted a diverse crowd engaged in spirited conversations, laughter rising like notes of a symphony. It felt vibrant and alive, just as he hoped his program would be. But he'd have to be part of it first. He had to break through the barricades of his self-doubt. The time had come. He approached the benefactor, who flashed a knowing smile that seemed to peel away the layers of his trepidation. For a moment, everything fell away, and there stood Tom, man on the precipice of possibility. "Thank you for meeting me," he said, surprising even himself with the steadiness of his voice. There was no turning back now. Whatever happened next would shape his reality, and that of countless others staring at their own crossroads. Little did he know that a challenge lay ahead, a confrontation that would test not only his resolve, but also the very foundations of what he believed it meant to stand strong against the uncertainties of life. The meeting could lead to something unexpected, or it could pull him into an even deeper struggle. Would he have the courage to face what lingered beneath the surface as the conversation began to unfold? Tom felt the weight of the benefactor's gaze as he settled into the cafe chair. The initial pleasantries felt like a warm-up, a soft opening that preceded the main act. Yet beneath the surface a current of tension thrummed. The stakes were high, and he was acutely aware that the way he presented himself could either elevate his dreams or send them crashing down. "What do you envision for the program?" the benefactor asked, his tone both casual and probing. Tom cleared his throat, feeling the perspiration bead on his brow, but instead of retreating behind his rehearsed outline, he chose to speak from the heart. "I want to create a space where young people can explore their identities and potential. I see the program as a reflection of my own journey, a place where vulnerability is not just welcomed, but embraced." The words tumbled forth, raw and intense, filled with the urgency he felt within. The benefactor appeared intrigued, leaning in slightly. "That's a brave perspective. But tell me, why should I invest in your vision? What makes you believe you can execute this idea?" The question struck deep, igniting a flicker of fear, yet it also awakened a sense of resolve. "Because I've faced my own failures and insecurities, I know how easy it is to falter. But I also understand the power of resilience," he replied, his voice growing steadier. "I've seen it in myself and others. I want to harness that power to inspire the youth around me, to show them that growth is rooted in grappling with adversity." As he spoke, Tom could feel the walls of his self-doubt beginning to crack. Vivid memories flashed in his mind, moments of insignificance when he felt powerless, moments that had transformed him into who he was today. He realized, in that instant, that his journey was not only about surviving struggle but also about honoring it. The benefactor's expression shifted. There was no longer skepticism but rather curiosity, paired with a hint of respect. "You've articulated your vision well, but tell me, how will you sustain this program in the long run? Sustaining passion is one thing. Maintaining purpose in the face of inevitable challenges is another." Tom's heart raced anew. This was the crux of the matter. This question resonated with his deepest fears. What if he couldn't maintain the momentum? What if the challenges he faced were too great? He had internalized his past failures so deeply that the thought of facing them again felt almost paralyzing. Yet, a part of him recognized the shift in the conversation's tone. This was not just a challenge, but an opportunity to display his understanding of resilience. Sustainability comes from building a community of support, not only from funding, but also from fostering relationships among the youth and mentors. It would be a collaborative effort. "I'm not trying to create something solitary. I want this to be a shared journey." The benefactor's expression softened as he listened, clearly evaluating Tom's sincerity. For the first time that day, Tom saw a glimmer of belief form in the other man's eyes. This belief ignited a fire within him, a realization that he didn't have to have all the answers, just the willingness to navigate the uncertainties together. Yet, beneath this spark of hope lay another layer of apprehension. Was he truly ready for the responsibilities that came with this endeavor? What if this support dissipated the moment obstacles emerged? As the conversation deepened, Tom felt the ground beneath him shift. The path he had once walked became murkier, revealing profound risks alongside potential rewards. "Let's discuss your next steps," the benefactor suggested, pen poised over his notes. Tom realized this was the moment he had been waiting for, yet an echo of doubt tugged at him. What risks was he willing to take to ensure this dream didn't just become another fleeting idea? Did he possess the tenacity to forge ahead into the unknown? The conversation continued to unfold, but in the back of his mind, a new dilemma simmered. Could he truly embrace the gravity of what lay ahead, or would the shadows of his past continue to cast doubt on his journey? As the benefactor leaned in with more questions, Tom steeled himself. The moment was unfolding, and so was he, inching closer to discovering the man he was meant to become. But uncertainty loomed. How far was he willing to go to achieve this? Tom's mind buzzed with the possibilities presented before him, yet the stakes felt tangible and heavy, like an anchor in the pit of his stomach. The benefactor's further inquiries generated an adrenaline-fueled response within him. He felt the need to impress, to prove that he was not merely a dreamer but a doer, capable of translating his vision into reality. "How can you leverage your past to teach these lessons?" the benefactor continued, as if peeling back the layers of Tom's resolve, exposing the vulnerabilities he had just begun to acknowledge. That question struck a chord. It forced Tom to confront the rawness of his personal history. He had always viewed his struggles as obstacles, harsh reminders of failures that shadowed his self-worth. But perhaps there was another way to frame those experiences, as essential stepping stones that could guide the youth he so deeply wanted to impact. "I want to be transparent about my journey," he began, his voice carrying a newfound clarity. "I've made mistakes, lost opportunities, because I didn't believe in myself. But those failures shaped my understanding of resilience. They pushed me to explore who I truly am. I want to create an environment where young people can feel free to express their setbacks, without fear of judgment." As the words left his mouth, a weight began to lift. Tom envisioned the faces of the young people he wanted to help. Imagined the conversations that might unfold in this nurturing space. Each hesitation, each setback he had faced, became a thread in the tapestry of his own narrative, beautifully flawed, richly complex. The benefactor raised an eyebrow, intrigued yet cautious. Empathy is crucial, but how do you plan to convert that vulnerability into actionable success? What measurements will you put in place to track growth? Inwardly, Tom felt the pressure mount again. The question, while necessary, made him acutely aware of the gap between conception and execution. What structures could he implement? How could he bottle the essence of creativity and resilience into a measurable format? He was beginning to feel the weight of responsibility, the duty to those who might one day look to him for guidance, not just inspiration. He took a breath and began to outline a fundamental framework, leaning back on his experiences and connecting them with practical goals. We could create workshops that center on self-discovery and dialogue. These would include measurable outcomes, like personal reflections and feedback loops from participants, to ensure we're fostering genuine growth. I want their experiences to inform our evolution as a program, a living, breathing entity. While speaking, Tom's confidence surged. Each point he articulated sharpened his vision. Yet the dualities never ceased to present themselves, the burgeoning hope battling against the specter of doubt. There was no blueprint for success. It was a complex matrix of trial and error. The benefactor's unimpressed demeanor seemed to fade slightly, allowing a flicker of encouragement to shine through. "That's a good start, but you understand the obstacles don't just come from within the program. External challenges will gnaw at your foundation as well." Tom felt a chill at the reminder of external criticism. The threat of failure loomed large, an unshakable presence. Yet this moment also unveiled an opportunity for growth, a chance to develop adaptability and resilience in the face of adversity. "What if I fail?" he asked himself, his thoughts racing. "What if this all crumbles?" But as soon as those thoughts surfaced, another stronger voice countered, pushing him onward. "What if it works? What if this becomes not just a program but a lifeline?" The laughter and bustle of the cafe around them faded into the background as Tom wrapped his mind around the gravity of his commitment. He realized that embracing the possibility of failure was as important as seeking success. "Can you handle the inevitable failures, Tom?" he asked himself internally, testing his resolve. He pictured the disappointed faces, the feeling of defeat that had paralyzed him in the past. But he let that thought flow through and dissipate, focusing instead on the promise of hope he was inspired to share. "Take the risk, or watch a dream languish," he resolved, channeling a deep well of determination. "I'm committed. I will evolve, and I will create something meaningful." The benefactor leaned back, eyes suddenly sharp with a mix of respect and intrigue. "Good," he said, the hint of a smile crossing his face. "Commitment is key. Let's delve further into what your vision will authentically require." With each subsequent question and follow-up discussion, Tom felt himself elevating, pushing past limitations he had previously accepted as inherent truths. But as the conversation deepened, he could sense a new wave of uncertainty creeping in. Was he truly prepared for the complexities ahead? The road to realization would not be straightforward. It would be laden with obstacles he had yet to foresee. As the realization settled over him like a fog, the weight of his choice hung palpably in the air. The unseen storms waiting to test his resolve lurked just beyond the horizon. Was he ready to face those challenges, or would he retreat back into the shadows of doubt? Only time would tell, as the path to his aspirations grew ever murkier, illuminated only by the flickering light of possibility. As the discussion continued, Tom found himself navigating through the uncharted waters of his aspirations with a degree of urgency that heightened his awareness of every nuance in the benefactor's demeanor. Questions swirled through his mind as he focused intensely on the conversation, each query from the benefactor cutting deeper into the fabric of his ambitions. "How do you plan to ensure sustainability in your efforts?" The question hung heavy in the air, echoing in Tom's mind as he processed its implications. It was one thing to articulate a grand vision, but translating that vision into a practical framework was an entirely different beast. He shifted in his seat, momentarily grappling with the overwhelming nature of the task. His personal history had often depicted him as someone who struggled with consistency. What if he couldn't deliver? What if he built something that crumbled under the pressure of scrutiny? Yet buried beneath that uncertainty was a glimmer of resilience, an acknowledgement that past setbacks provided him with a unique perspective, a guiding principle for future success. "I believe sustainability will come from incorporating feedback and adaptation into our program," he replied, his voice steadier this time. "For example, we can establish regular check-ins not just for our participants, but for ourselves. Evaluating what works, learning from what doesn't. It's vital. We should build a culture of continuous improvement." The benefactor nodded thoughtfully, but Tom could see that he remained unconvinced. "That's good in theory, but many fail to execute. What specifically will prevent your program from becoming another fleeting initiative?" The inquiry stung, a reminder of the potential pitfalls that lurked behind every ambitious attempt. And yet, Tom felt a fire ignite within him. He recalled the nights he'd spent mapping out his dreams, compiling endless notes and sketches of what he envisioned, an inescapable calling toward action. Those moments had transformed him. They were not mere fantasies, but the beginnings of something substantial. "I will ensure that each participant has a stake in their development," he asserted, confidence blooming in his chest. "We can form mentorship circles that empower them to take ownership of not only their journey, but also the program itself. By involving them in the design and execution of our processes, we create an intrinsic motivation for growth." A flicker of intrigue flashed across the benefactor's face. "And what if one of those participants resists the process?" The question cut deeper still, forcing Tom to reflect on the individual dynamics within any group environment. Would he be equipped to handle conflict? Would he crumble under the weight of dissent? Yet, as the doubt began to creep in, he reminded himself of the very empathy that inspired his quest. "That's where resilience comes in," he articulated, the vision clarifying as he spoke. "We've all faced challenges, and if those youth can see me as a guide who understands resistance, who has walked through my own struggles, then maybe they will feel empowered to engage rather than withdraw." It becomes a cycle of support rather than isolation. Each word he spoke fortified his resolve, yet uncertainty lingered like an unwelcome shadow. The benefactor's penetrating gaze felt as if it pierced through to the uncertainties hiding within Tom. Can you guarantee that this community won't just mirror your past challenges? How do you prevent a cycle of failure? The question echoed painfully in his mind, dredging up fears he had fought hard to keep buried. Was he truly equipped to break the cycle, to create an environment that fostered growth? Would he falter when faced with the harsh realities of leading a group? He could feel the air thicken, the weight of self-judgment pressing down on him. I can't promise there won't be failures, he admitted, swallowing hard. But what I can promise is that we will view them as lessons rather than endpoints. I believe in creating a safety net for exploration. Without risk, there can be no genuine breakthrough. Something shifted in the benefactor's expression, a tacit acknowledgement of Tom's resolve. All right, he said slowly, nodding slightly. You understand that this is a path not just of teaching others, but of intense personal growth, one fraught with the same challenges you've faced. Are you ready for that? In that moment, Tom felt like he was staring into the abyss again. The enormity of the commitment swelled around him, highlighting the risks and responsibilities. But beyond the fear lay the exhilarating promise of transformation, not just for the youth he sought to guide, but for himself as well. I am, he declared, the words carrying the weight of resonance, fervor building like a crescendo inside him. Yet even as he spoke, a sharply nagging thought lingered. What if this was merely the beginning? What if the real trials lay ahead, waiting to ensnare him in unexpected ways? Tom had chosen the path of courage, but at what cost? How would he face the inevitable challenges ahead? The unknown loomed, casting long shadows over his burgeoning vision, daring him to continue forward. As the benefactor leaned in, eyes alight with keen interest, Tom felt the moment teeter on the edge, an onset of realization that the greatest battles might be fought within himself. Would he emerge as the leader he envisioned, or would he falter under the pressures yet to come? The weight of the benefactor's gaze lingered as Tom exited the conference room, each step charged with an electric mix of anticipation and dread. Conversations from the last hour spiraled through his mind, a cacophony of pressures intertwining with his expectations. He was no longer just Tom, the guy with ideas and dreams. He was now also the aspiring architect of a vision programmed to evolve into something tangible. The hallway stretched out before him, walls adorned with abstract art, a reminder of the path of creativity he had chosen. The world seemed to blur around him as he ruminated on the conversation. How had he arrived here, on the precipice of something potentially monumental? It was exhilarating and terrifying in equal measure. He felt unsettled. Those piercing questions from the benefactor had drawn out latent insecurities. Would he truly be able to foster an environment where failures were lessons instead of failures? He had all the right intentions, but was his foundation sturdy enough? The thought of past missteps loomed large, like a specter challenging his resolve. Tom retreated to a quiet corner where the hubbub of the office was muted. He needed to think. Pulling out his notebook, he flipped to pages filled with sketches of ideas. Ideas that had once excited him now felt like a double-edged sword. Would he be able to uphold the ideals he had laid out? He jotted down the benefactor's questions, forcing himself to confront each one as if they were parts of an exam he had to pass. Underneath his frustrations, something remarkable ignited, a conviction to transform. If he had learned anything through his journey, it was that reflection bore fruit. The act of writing helped him sift through the chaos inside his mind. Each question had a counter, a strategy that danced within his grasp. They were no longer creeping doubts but rather cornerstones for building a resilient program. Understanding that he needed to cultivate not just his own growth, but also the growth of the participants, sat heavy on his heart. Committing to mentorship circles seemed like a natural evolution. Yet, the essence of leadership weighed even heavier. Tom, right? A voice interrupted his reverie, pulling him back into the reality of the busy office. He looked up to see a colleague, Jane, who had a reputation for being direct and insightful. She joined him, leaning against the wall, her expression a blend of curiosity and concern. You seemed pretty deep in thought. Everything okay? Tom hesitated. Here was a chance to vocalize his doubts, but he also sensed an opportunity for growth. I've just been wrestling with what it means to truly lead. The commitment ahead feels enormous, especially when I think of my past failures. Jane's brow furrowed slightly. You mean the times you felt like you let people down? Yes, he sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. What if I fail again? What if I can't create the environment I envision? I get it, she said, her tone steady but compassionate. But remember, each stumble is a lesson. Your past taught you valuable things, empathy, resilience. Have you considered applying those lessons beyond just motivation? Her words struck a chord. Tom had always leaned on empathy as a pivotal component of his journey, yet he felt a new angle surfacing: accountability. What if I tie personal growth metrics alongside our program? Create a shared experience where everyone, including me, can hold each other accountable? Now you're talking. Jane's enthusiasm was infectious. Tom felt a flush of energy. Developing a transparent feedback system where successes and failures became group reflections would mean everyone, including him, would have a stake in the process. It shifted the narrative from one where he was simply a guide to one where they all journeyed together, a collective path of growth and learning. The dawning realization that he could transform his leadership style rolled over him like a wave. It wasn't merely about empowering others, it was about also being vulnerable enough to hold himself accountable in this journey. Lost in thought, he barely noticed the chatter of the employees around him. The untangling of his fears began to create room for a new narrative, a narrative where success and failure intertwined to form a richer tapestry of experience. But with this fresh perspective came another question. Could he put this newfound strategy into practice in a climate of unpredictability? The moment was pivotal. The past may have been riddled with challenges, but what lay ahead was a chance to truly understand transformation, not just for himself, but for all those who chose to walk this path with him. He left Jane with a grateful smile, but uncertainty still simmered under the surface. The clock was ticking. He only had so much time before the program officially launched. Would he flesh out these ideas before they slipped away? A chill ran through him, not of fear, but of readiness. The beginning of something demanding was within reach, and he could feel his pulse quicken in response. In the hours that followed, he would have to confront the elevated stakes of personal accountability. The question loomed: how would he navigate the inevitable conflicts that came with those responsibilities? Would this new focus reveal strengths he didn't know he had? As he left the office that evening, the horizon ahead was still clouded with uncertainty. But Tom pressed on, ready to confront the creeping shadows of doubt once more. He was on the brink of discovery, both of the program's potential and of his own leadership capability. With every step forward, however, an underlying tension buzzed. What unforeseen challenges awaited him on this freshly paved road to collaboration and accountability? The office was hushed, the remnants of afternoon chatter fading with the setting sun. Tom settled at his desk, the dim light highlighting his scattered sketches and notes. As his thoughts intertwined with the fervor of the day, the fear of failure returned, but it was now accompanied by a curious resolve. He methodically glanced over the notes he had jotted down with Jane, their potential morphing into plans that he yearned to bring to life. What edge would he create? How could he engage everyone in this program, transforming individuals through collective growth? He needed action, not just ideas. The notion of establishing personal growth metrics loomed large, yet the practicalities weighed heavy. How to measure personal accountability without inducing anxiety? He began outlining a framework. Each segment would represent a domain of growth: professional skills, teamwork, creative thinking, and emotional intelligence. The simplicity of it energized him. How could he foster a culture where vulnerability was seen as strength? He yearned for a space where people came together, not just to grow individually, but to uplift one another, an interdependence that fostered trust and understanding. Tom leaned back, rubbing his chin as he envisioned the program's launch. The very thought of standing in front of his peers sent an adrenaline rush through him. Would they see him as a legitimate leader, or would they sense his concealed anxieties? He was jolted from his thoughts by the sound of chairs scraping against the floor as colleagues began to shut down for the night. Gathering his belongings, he decided to take a walk, hoping to clear his mind. The brisk evening air embraced him, but moments later, unease began to creep back in. The city lay before him, a web of lights and sounds, each representing lives intersecting, colliding, and melding in the pursuit of purpose. A heaviness settled in his chest, a gnawing fear that he would chart a course into these complexities without the right tools. Would he retain the authenticity he coveted as he stepped into the role he envisioned? Tom stopped by a small bench, impulsively taking a seat to reflect. The skyline flickered against the velvet backdrop of dusk, pulling thoughts inward. He couldn't afford to let his past overshadow his present ambitions. It was crucial to evolve or risk becoming stagnant. But in honing his focus on transformation, would he inadvertently overreach? The desire for accountability swung ominously, a tightrope walk between empowerment and pressure. His mind danced with contrasting images, the failings of yesteryears stark against the aspiration he felt pooling within him. Each drawn line on paper, small hints of an awakening, whispered that he was more than a mere participant in this journey. He was destined to be a catalyst of change. But within this became another revelation. How committed was he to this evolution? Staying true to his vulnerability, accepting feedback, and even potentially hard conversations with team members stirred an anxious knot in his stomach. Tomorrow, when he discussed his framework, he would have to invite scrutiny into his vision. Would he be able to accept criticism constructively? Could he navigate dissent without reverting to his previous self, one who shied away from conflict, preferring the safety of silence? As he returned to his desk, Tom was faced with a decision. Embrace the discomfort of vulnerability and risk, or retreat into the safe simplicity of his old ways. There, illuminated under the harsh glow of his desk lamp, he made a choice. He would confront dissent head-on, even if it sent shivers of uncertainty through him. The chance to explore his limits, to discover what lay hidden beneath layers of self-doubt, beckoned invitingly. Shifting into action, he drafted an agenda for tomorrow's discussion, a proposal to discuss their collective frameworks for growth and accountability. It wouldn't just be his singular vision. They would co-create this journey, weaving everyone's input into the tapestry of their shared experience. But the question remained, could he withstand the storm of unknown responses? How deep did his commitment to transparency and mutual accountability run? As night cloaked the city in silence, Tom realized with a sudden surge of clarity that true leadership meant allowing oneself to be seen, and perhaps even standing tall amidst the chaos of vulnerability. The stakes were rising. Discovering what lay beyond yielding to doubt would be the cornerstone upon which he built this new phase of his life. But what consequences would accompany this elevated commitment? The dawn of a new chapter was near, and with it would come the time to conquer the greatest challenge yet: himself. As Tom entered the classroom the next day, the air buzzed with a mixture of anticipation and nerves. This was the moment he had been preparing for, the culmination of every late-night thought and every ounce of vulnerability he had embraced. The desks were arranged in a circle, fostering a space for open dialogue, a community where everyone had a voice. He stood before the eager faces of his students, the fear clawing at his insides quickly transformed into a sense of responsibility. "Today," he began, his voice steady, "we're not just going to discuss a program. We're going to start building something together, an opportunity to grow and learn from each other." Tom laid out his vision, explaining the framework he had developed. He described how each domain would encompass not just skills, but personal stories, journeys of resilience that connected them all. As he spoke, the students leaned in, intrigued by the collaborative approach. "What if we fail?" one student asked, her voice shaking slightly. Tom recognized the weight of that question. It echoed his own fears. "We will, and that's okay," he replied earnestly, feeling the shift in the atmosphere as he embraced a new approach. "Every failure is an opportunity to learn. Together, we'll create a safe space where we can share those experiences. We will support each other." The weight of acceptance settled over him, For the first time, he felt light, truly understood. It was in that moment he recognized the power of vulnerability, not as a weakness, but as a path to genuine connection. The workshop that unfolded was filled with laughter and honesty, but also a few tentative voices expressing doubt. They shared stories of their struggles, of times they felt lost. Tom saw the healing power of community manifest right before him. Each story unveiled a new layer of understanding and empathy. Then came the most defining moment. A student named Mia, often silent and reserved, spoke up. "I never thought my story would mean anything to anyone, but if we can learn together, I want to be part of this." The class erupted in encouragement, and Tom felt a rush of pride. It was confirmation that their collective vision was blossoming. After the session ended, Tom found himself enveloped in a wave of contentment. Students lingered, exchanging ideas, eager to contribute to the program he'd outlined. It hit him then. This wasn't just about them finding their way forward. He was finding his too. Weeks passed, and the program evolved, flourishing with each passing session. Tom skillfully integrated feedback loops, ensuring that every experience of success, failure, and learning was accounted for. His students became his accountability partners, and naturally, he transformed from being a teacher to a facilitator of growth. Then came the acknowledgement he had once longed for. Members of the local community began attending the sessions, curious to witness the wonder unfolding within. As Tom led discussions, he noted their admiration. This time, it was genuine. It validated every moment spent nurturing both his students and himself. One afternoon, he stood before a gathering of local educators who had come to observe the program in action, their expressions shifting from intrigue to admiration. Afterward, one remarked, "You've turned your life struggles into a powerful tool for change. Your students are fortunate." Tom felt the gravity of those words seep into him. He had moved past the lingering shadows of doubt, emerging transformed. A leader, not solely through authority, but through vulnerability and compassion. Recognition followed soon after, with invitations to present the program at educational seminars blossoming like flowers in spring. That progress felt surreal. He was no longer merely a teacher with fading memories of failure, but a beacon of resilience. In each classroom, he saw students embracing challenges, confidence blossoming in their eyes. The kitten he had saved became a symbol of his journey, a reminder that vulnerabilities could inspire growth, that each struggle served a purpose. As he gazed out upon his students engaged in their collaborative projects, he realized he had achieved more than he believed possible. He had conquered his fears, proved his capabilities, and established a firm position, not only as a teacher, but as a mentor, whose own narrative was far from defeated. Tom stood tall, filled with solid confidence and recognized competence. He had turned the tides of adversity into advantages, planting seeds of hope and growth within himself and those around him. In this evolving tale, he had triumphed, transformed, and, in doing so, revived his own spark of purpose while encouraging others to do the same. And as he stepped into the next day, the peaks of possibility stretched before him, not just as a dreamer, but as an architect of change, ready for the challenges that awaited, each one a chance to grow. This was his moment. Now you need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. We want to hear from you. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You know the importance of uplifting stories. Let's keep this journey going.